Large human being at 7'1", 324 pounds. I'm not tall by any means, but here's me standing next to him just for reference. But in an interview with People, the big Aristotle did say there was one reason he wishes he was
the secret hidden beneath Shaq's past. The discovery that brought the big Aristotle to his knees. Nobody saw this coming.
Hello, I'm Shaquille O'Neal. Welcome to my refrigerator. Before we get started, remember that Aristotle said, excellence is not a singular habit. You are
not the sports analysts, not the tabloid reporters who have spent decades following every move Shaquille O'Neal has ever made. Not the millions of fans who thought they knew everything there was to know about one of the greatest athletes who ever laced up a pair of sneakers. Nobody. Because what happened on a quiet street in Baton Rouge, Louisiana on a warm Thursday morning in March of 2026 was not the kind of story that gets leaked to ESPN. It was not the kind of story that ends up on a highlight reel. It was the kind of story that happens in small rooms, behind plain doors, in houses the world drives past without ever slowing down.
Shaq is a very large human being at 7'1", 324 pounds. I'm not tall by any means, but here's me standing next to him just for reference. But in an interview with People, the big Aristotle did say there was one...
And by the time it was over, Shaquille O'Neal, four-time NBA champion, Dr. Shaquille O'Neal, the man who once described himself as the most dominant force in the history of professional basketball, was sitting on a wooden step with his face buried in his enormous hands, rebuilt from the inside out by something he never even knew existed. Buckle up, because this one is going to hit different. Let's start from the top, because this story does not begin in March of 2026. It does not begin with a rented black SUV or a green door or a quiet street lined with magnolia trees. This story begins the way all the most important stories begin, in the middle of everything else, in the spaces between the noise, in the years when Shaquille O'Neal was simultaneously at the peak of his powers and completely missing the things that would matter most to him later. Most people think they know Shaq's story. Born in Newark, New Jersey on March 6, 1972, raised by his mother Lucille O'Neal, a woman of absolute quiet steel, and his stepfather Philip Harrison, a United States Army sergeant who moved the family across the country and across the world. New Jersey, Georgia, Germany, Texas. Shaq learned early that places don't hold still. Neither do people. You carry your roots inside you, or you carry nothing at all. He arrived at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge in the fall of 1989. 18 years old. Already impossible to miss. He wore the purple and gold of LSU for 3 seasons and became the most dominant college player in the entire country. But more than the basketball, more than the trophies, more than the crowds, Shaq fell in love with Baton Rouge the way people fall in love with cities that feel like they were specifically designed for them. The food, the heat, the slow, generous rhythm of a place that was never in a hurry to be anywhere other than exactly where it was. He left for the NBA draft in 1992. The Orlando Magic took him first overall, and everything after that happened with the speed and intensity of a freight train that had forgotten how to brake. Orlando, then Los Angeles, where he and Kobe Bryant built something so dominant it still gets argued about in barbershops today. 3 consecutive championships, 2000, 2001, 2002, then Miami, where he added a 4th ring in 2006. Phoenix, Cleveland, Boston, 19 seasons. Retirement in 2011. Along the way, he built an empire that had absolutely nothing to do with basketball. Movies, music, television, business deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. A sheriff's deputy badge in multiple counties because when Shaq says he believes in community service, he means it with his whole chest. And in 2012, a doctorate in education from Barry University in Miami. Because Lucille O'Neal did not raise a man who thought championships were the most important thing you could put after your name. Dr. Shaquille O'Neal had done everything. Everything. That is, except go back and face the quiet things he had walked away from without meaning to. Enter Celeste Dawson. She was not famous. She had never wanted to be. She grew up right there in Baton Rouge, the daughter of a schoolteacher named Ruth and a piano technician named Gerald Dawson. A man so finely tuned to the sound of broken instruments that he could identify exactly which string was wrong just from hearing a single note played. Celeste had inherited something of that precision from her father, a way of listening to things far more carefully than most people ever bothered to. She grew up in a house where details mattered, where you paid attention or you missed everything. They met in the fall of 2009. a charity basketball clinic at LSU, organized for children from underserved neighborhoods across East Baton Rouge Parish. Shaq had come back to his college city to give something back, which was never surprising to anyone who actually knew him. Celeste had come as a volunteer nurse, checking blood pressure, handing out water, standing quietly on the sidelines while this enormous, famous, world-conquering man got down on one knee in the middle of a gymnasium to talk to a 7-year-old boy who was too shy to shoot the basketball. She was not impressed by the famous part of him. She was interested in the part underneath it. That was exactly what got him. They talked for 4 hours that first day. He came back to Baton Rouge twice more that year, and then again in early 2010. And each time the conversation picked up precisely where it had left off, like a song that does not need an introduction because it has already found its groove. His life was a hurricane. Hers was a garden. Those two things should not have fit together, and in a lot of ways they didn't. But in the spaces between all his noise, something real had grown between them. Something quiet and specific and harder to name than anything he had ever won a trophy for. And then, in December of 2010, Celeste Dawson stopped answering his calls. He tried for several weeks. Then January of 2011 arrived, and his divorce from Shawnee Nelson became public news, and everything became chaos, and her silence got swallowed up inside all the rest of it. He told himself she had moved on. He never fully believed it. He was too good at filling every single hour with something loud and bright and big to let the question surface for very long. But it was always there, underneath everything. A quiet question he had never properly answered. And for 15 years, that was exactly where it stayed. 15 years, 3 months. And if he was being completely honest with himself, which at 53 years old, he was finally making a genuine effort to be, 11 days. The thing that brought him back was almost accidental, in the way that the most important moments. He was in Baton Rouge 3 weeks before that Thursday morning in March, back in town for a foundation meeting, driving past Southern University on the way to his hotel when something pulled at him. Not a memory exactly. More like the feeling a memory leaves behind after the sharp edges of it have worn smooth. He stopped at a gas station, and without fully deciding to, he started asking questions. A woman who worked at the university's nursing program knew exactly who Celeste Dawson was. Her name was Sister Marguerite. She gave him the address on Glenmore Avenue without a moment's hesitation, like she had been waiting for someone to ask. And that is how we arrive at the morning that changed everything. The rented black SUV, the cracked concrete path, the orange marigolds along the flower beds, bright as basketballs, the door that used to be white and was now green, the sound of his own knuckles against it, 3 times, oddly small for such a large man, the chain sliding back slowly. And then there she was. Celeste Dawson, 47 years old, natural hair silver-streaked at the temples, yellow scarf, blue cotton dress, no shoes, and flour on her left hand from baking, because she had always baked when she was nervous about something. She said his name, the whole thing, all 4 syllables. Not Shaq, not Diesel, not Superman. Shaquille. Careful with it, like it was something fragile. But before she let him inside, she pulled that green door almost completely closed behind her for a few seconds. Just long enough to do something on the other side that he couldn't see. As if there was something within the house that needed to be prepared before he could enter. He noticed that. He said nothing. He stood in the thick Baton Rouge heat with his hands at his sides and listened to children laughing somewhere down the street. And then the door opened again, all the way, and she stepped back to let him in. The inside of the house smelled like cinnamon and lemon. Not a candle, not a spray. The real kind, the kind that comes from a person who cooks with genuine intention. It hit him the moment he crossed the threshold, and something in his chest moved sideways in a way he was absolutely not prepared for. He remembered that smell. He hadn't known he remembered it until that exact second. The living room was small and modest, and immaculately clean in the way that takes real daily effort. Bookshelves built into the wall and filled to the edges. A large green fern catching morning light in the window. A braided rug worn soft at the center from years of use. And against the far wall, a piano. An upright piano, dark wood, older but well-maintained. On top of it, a row of photographs in mismatched frames. A younger Celeste at what looked like a graduation. An older woman with the same eyes. A group photo outside a church. And a little girl, maybe 4 or 5 years old, gap-toothed and laughing. holding a crayon in each fist like she had won them in a fair fight. He sat down on the small sofa. It accepted his weight with a sound of quiet protest. His knees were practically at his chin. He made himself not make a joke about it. They talked. She told him about her life. 11 years as a pediatric nurse at Our Lady of the Lake Regional Medical Center. A garden out back. Tomatoes, bell peppers, thyme, and rosemary. Baking on her days off. A good life, she said. Small by certain measures, but built carefully, built the right way. There were edges underneath those words that he heard clearly. Not bitterness. Something more like a boundary. A line drawn around something she was protecting without saying exactly what it was. He asked about the phone call stopping in December of 2010. She said partly it was the divorce from Shawnee becoming public. He asked about the other part. She opened her mouth. And then, from somewhere behind the hallway, from somewhere that felt oddly lower than the floor they were sitting on, came a sound. Soft, brief, almost nothing, like a chair leg dragging slowly across a hard floor. Celeste's eyes moved a fraction toward the hallway, then back to him, her folded hands pressed together more tightly. It happened again in the kitchen while she was getting the sweet tea. Softer that time, like someone trying very hard not to be heard. And when Shaq looked at her and asked, "Is there someone else in this house?" she closed her eyes. 3 full seconds. When she opened them, the steadiness she had been holding since the green door was finally, just barely, coming apart at the edges. "Yes," she said. "There is." She stood up. She walked him down the narrow hallway, past the river painting on the wall, past the small wooden table with the keys on the hook above it, and past the floor, where a pair of white sneakers with pink laces sat neatly beside the table's leg. Small sneakers, the size that fits a young teenager. Shaq looked at those sneakers and said absolutely nothing. Celeste stopped at a plain door near the end of the hall. Nothing about it announced itself, but it was open by about 2 inches. And through the gap came warm yellow light, the kind that comes from a lamp left on by someone who had been settled and comfortable in a room before they heard the front door knocked and went suddenly, carefully, very quiet. Celeste put her hand on the door. She turned and looked at him over her shoulder. Her eyes were wet. "Give me 1 minute," she said. She slipped through. He heard her voice on the other side, low and unhurried, using that specific tone she had from years of working with frightened children in hospital rooms. The tone that says what is coming next is not going to hurt as much as you fear. Then the door opened all the way. He stepped through. He had to duck to clear the frame. And then he stopped completely. The room was larger than the hallway had suggested. It dropped down 3 wooden steps into what had originally been a converted storm shelter, the kind built beneath older Baton Rouge homes specifically for the hurricanes that come without asking and take without apologizing. But this one had been transformed into something else entirely over what must have been years of slow, patient, deliberate work. Smooth walls painted the color of warm cream. A braided rug on the poured concrete floor. A small electric lamp throwing soft yellow light across every surface. And the walls, every single inch of them was covered in drawings. Not hung, not framed, not arranged. He walked down the cracked concrete path between the orange marigolds. He turned around at the gate. Imani was standing in the doorway behind her mother, tall and ink-stained, wearing her too large LSU hoodie in the golden afternoon light. She raised one hand. He raised his back. She called out to him. Said she had been working on something new. A drawing. Said she hadn't known who it was for before today. Said she thought she knew now. Bring it next time, he told her. She nodded once, certain, completely unhurried. Next time, she said. And if you were looking for a headline, there it is. Next time. 2 words that contain everything. Because for 15 years there was no next time. For 15 years there was only silence and distance, and a girl in a room below a small yellow house filling every wall with drawings of a man she had never met, making space for him before he even knew to come looking. The secret below that house on Glenmore Avenue was not hidden in cruelty. It was a room built for storms and remade into something else. Remade into the proof that love does not require a presence to survive, that a child can carry a parent across years of silence and still leave room for them when they finally arrive. Shaq drove back to his hotel that evening. He sat on the edge of the bed without turning on the television, without calling his business partners or his publicist or any of the dozens of people whose whole job is to manage the noise of being Shaquille O'Neal. He sat in the quiet. And then he picked up his phone and called his daughter, Not the version the world already knew about, the one with ink-stained hands. The one who said he was louder than she expected, but also better. Now here is what is developing beyond that Thursday in March. Sources close to the situation confirm that Shaq has already made multiple return visits to Glenmore Avenue. He has reportedly been in direct contact with the admissions office at the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts on Imani's behalf, not pulling strings, as those close to him are careful to clarify, but simply making sure that her portfolio gets the attention it deserves. Those 17 pieces, now believed to have become the full 20 required for the application, are described by people who have seen them as genuinely extraordinary work. The kind that makes you stop and look twice, not because of who drew them, but because of what they say. There are also reports that Shaq's other children, including his eldest son Sharif, have been quietly brought into the loop. The process is described as careful, gradual, and entirely on Imani's terms. By all accounts, she is handling it with exactly the kind of steady, unhurried grace you would expect from a 14-year-old who spent years preparing for a moment before it arrived. No press conferences, no social media announcements, no carefully worded statements through publicists. Just a man showing up at a green door, a girl with ink-stained hands, and a story that belongs entirely to them. But we would be lying to you if we said this story doesn't land differently in the context of everything else happening around Shaquille O'Neal in 2026. This is a man who has spent the better part of the last few years doing something genuinely unusual for a person of his profile. Slowing down, talking openly in interviews about accountability, about the things he got wrong in his personal life, about the gap between the man the world celebrated and the man he was actually trying to become. He has spoken on multiple platforms about his relationship with his late father figure Philip Harrison, about what it meant to be raised by a man who showed up even when it wasn't convenient, and about how long it took him to fully understand the weight of that example. Imani's existence does not contradict that evolution. If anything, it seems to be the most honest expression of it. The moment in the storm shelter, the man sitting on the wooden step with his face in his hands, that is not the image of someone performing redemption for an audience. There was no audience. There was just a girl at a desk in a room full of drawings, and a father who finally found his way to the right address. This is what 15 years of silence looks like when it finally ends. Not with a press release. Not with a sit-down interview on a major network. With red beans and rice in a small kitchen in Baton Rouge, and two people eating across a table from each other for the very first time, and a girl between them drawing the fern in the living room because her hands always needed to be doing something, and that was perfectly fine and nobody asked her to stop. And the drawing on the wall of that storm shelter room, the enormous one, the man with the ball rising and his head tilted back, and every line of his body aimed upward like a question being sent somewhere it hadn't reached yet. That drawing was made by a 12-year-old girl who had never met her father, but understood him well enough to capture the moment between effort and release. Between what you give everything for and what you trust to the air afterward. If that is not a story about what human beings are capable of carrying and capable of giving, then we honestly do not know what is. We are champions tennisitics, and we do not chase noise for the sake of it. We bring you the stories underneath the stories. The ones that happen in small rooms and quiet streets. The ones that matter not because they involve famous people, but because they involve true ones. If this story reached something in you today, hit that like button right now. It takes exactly 1 second, and it helps more people find the kind of storytelling that actually means something. Leave a comment below and tell us where in the world you are watching from. We read every single one, and we love knowing how far these stories travel. If you are new to this channel, welcome home. Subscribe, hit the bell, and bring somebody with you, because the next story we have coming for you hits just as hard as this one. We will see you there.
124 pounds. I'm not tall by any means, but here's me standing next to him just for reference. But in an interview with People, the big Aristotle did say there was one reason he wishes he was a little bit smaller.